Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. We're coming to you right after the Vegas Grand Prix. Well, morning after the Vegas Grand Prix. That was a pretty good race, right, Rob?
Yeah. Did you enjoy it? Because you're being a trooper for being here. Actually, we're both here in different circumstances. You're here. You've been sick as a pig, and you didn't even watch it live last night. You watched it this morning, but you got it super early so that you could watch it and we could record. I might sound a little wired because I'm running purely on caffeine because my neighbor Jim hosted a poker tournament last night to get us in kind of the Vegas mood. Um, I was convinced the game would sort of fizzle out around midnight, and then me and Jim would need to find something to do for an hour before the race, and then there was a real risk we would probably just be falling asleep in his basement. Um, I went all in because the formation lap had started, and I wanted to go and watch the race. So I made a ridiculous bet. I did have two pairs, so I thought, what happens if I win? I don't want to keep playing. I want to go and watch the race. But the guy to my right, Dave, he had a better two pair than me, so I just kind of gave him all my money and went and watched the race. And I've had about 3 hours sleep.
Vegas, baby, Vegas.
Ah, yeah, I thought it was a pretty good race. We'll pick the bones out of that in a,
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
few minutes. Uh, for anyone new, and maybe there are some new people because we set up a Blue Sky account last week just to see how things would go, just, hedge our bets in case the Twitterverse explodes. And it's kind of taken off. And there's a whole bunch of new people out there that have said they're going to come along and listen to us. So if this is your first time tuning into the Dirty Side, welcome. We will do news and social where we round up everything that caught our eye this week. Brian will crack open the video vault, which actually I put one in this week for first
I
time in
saw
about a
that.
million
We'll let
years.
that slide. We'll let that slide.
Then we will pick the bones out of the Vegas weekend and then preview Qatar, and that will be that. So, do you want to jump in, Brian? Should we go for it?
Yeah, let's do it. So the first news story is actually something we talked a little bit about last week in terms of timing of races and when races were happening in 25 and especially 26, where the calendar is more malleable. And we saw this idea that said, well, they'll do a rotation of races. And the rumors are that they intend the Dutch Grand Prix will rotate annually from 26 in a pool with Barcelona, Spa, and Imola. And so, yeah, I, if they
Sorry,
could,
I'm miming a knife stab to the heart here as soon as you read out Spa.
well,
It's just,
first of all,
no.
Barcelona's fallen off the calendar, right? Isn't it fallen off in favor of Madrid at
Yeah,
some
so maybe it
point?
just means Spanish GP Barcelona. If they're going to start rotating from, no, wouldn't bring a brand new track on and then say, "Oh, great news, guys! You're going
No.
to rotate from the moment
So
we bring
I'm
you
just
on."
curious to see. I'm fairly certain we'll lose Barcelona, but I don't like Spa being in this rotation. And I know I was the buzzkill last week who said I'm not a huge Imola guy, and if it ended up in the rotation, I could live with that. And Zandvoort, I'll put in that same category. Enjoy watching the race. If it's not every year, am I going to cry? Probably not. But Spa, come on, man. And so, in addition to calendar news, it looks like my Canada, in starting in 26, will move to May, so that it's closer to the Miami race. So we have a North American swing as opposed to it's like Miami and then back in Europe and then back to Canada and then back. So
Yeah,
this will make a lot more sense. Doesn't affect our going next year though in 25. Same
no,
time.
no, same time. Just got to make sure. Mother Nature, if you're listening, New England either needs no snow this year or phenomenal amounts because a small amount of snow will put my son's graduation right on Canada race weekend. So let's just come on, Mother Nature, you can do this. Anyway, so then we had kind of all this news was, oh, Sainz is going to hang around after Abu Dhabi and he's going to test for Williams. Dun dun dun. And I was like, well, because he's going to drive for them next year. What's the big deal? And everyone was making this big thing. And now apparently it's not the done thing. It hasn't been done loads, but apparently Hulk's probably going to test for Sauber and Ocon's going to test for Haas. So then everyone, like the internet, loves to get all up in arms over everything. Oh, but why is Lewis not doing Ferrari? Why won't Ferrari let Lewis? Do they want Charles to win and they don't want Lewis already? It's like, no, he's got sponsor commitments with Mercedes, so he can't. It's like it was one of those things that grew into this big, like everyone was angry about something, but nothing burger.
Totally. Totally a nothing burger. And then if we could go to the GM story, we'll skip one and you can come back to that. But this picked up a ton of steam this week, a combo of things. And we've talked a lot about it here on the Dirty Side. If you go back to one of the fall breaks, I think, I think there were weeks in a row I tried to talk about this story, and I kept screwing it up each week. And we joked
Yeah.
about clean up on aisle Andretti. And I made the statement. It's rare that I get something right, so I have to at least highlight the fact that I got something right. I said, this story is not done. The money behind the bid is serious, and these people don't lose. Like the insurance conglomerate of Group 1001 and Dan Taurus and Delaware Life, all owned or related to um, Guggenheim Partners and Mark Walter, they make smart business decisions and they have very, very deep pockets. And so my comment was when we left Andretti last, when Michael stepped back from day-to-day operations, I said, I don't think the story's done. And interestingly, when Formula One Media and Liberty Media, when their CEO stepped away, all of a sudden, very fast, no Andretti, no Greg Maffei, all of a sudden people are like, oh, yeah, we could see Cadillac or GM on the grid soon. And now there are rumors it'll be in the next 2 weeks. It'll be announced for 26. That's crazy.
I will let you dine out on this a little bit, but you at no point said, I think Andretti will pull out and it'll all be kicked out and it'll all be GM only and it'll just be Cadillac.
I
Because
didn't.
you were thinking the Andretti bid could still be in there. So just for anybody that's not followed the story, so Brian pretty much did nail it. We'll give him this one. He did nail it. But it looks like now GM have basically gone, well, we're just going to be a manufacturer then. We're going to come in like a Mercedes and we're going to back the team and we're going to be like Audi as well, coming in as a constructor. We'll make everything. We'll be on the grid for 2026. We'll have to be a customer of an engine for a couple of years because we won't have got the power unit up to speed. But apparently that's massively more appealing to the rest of the Formula One grid as well. That if you're, I don't understand why, I don't understand all the financials, but coming in as a constructor and having GM, I guess, putting their money where their mouth is and
Right.
not just coming in on the back of an Andretti bid and just carrying the badge of Cadillac around with them. Them actually being a constructor apparently is massively changes. And at first, it was all the, I won't name them because that's not nice, but it was all the clickbait sites that had
Right,
all
right.
this news up, right? And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then when it's being announced on BBC Sport, one of the most conservative don't like to put any rumor on there. You know, they only just announced that Lewis is going to Ferrari last week because that's how long they wait until they announce things. When you saw the story running on there, you're like, okay, this has got legs, and yeah, we might have an extra team on the grid next year. 26, sorry, not next
26,
year.
yeah. And the AP is even reporting at this point the team will be called Cadillac F1. For the first 2 years, it'll be powered by Ferrari engines, and then GM will have its own Cadillac power unit ready in the 28th season. So this is exciting. Now, I got to be honest, I got a call fairly early on when this news came out. They asked if I could be one of the two drivers. I said, you know what, I would love to do that. I don't know if I fit in the car. So they're going to make an American-sized car for an American F1 driver. And I'm looking forward to it. It'll be me and Fat Stig from Top Gear.
They're gonna have to build the car around you. They
That's
won't be able to get you
probably
into it. That's what
never a
they'll have to
chance.
do. Just
Never
and
a
then you'll
chance.
never have to leave it. You'll just man and machine will just fuse. Um, uh, I think that's it. Yeah, I mean there was just one little piece that I caught up on, which was not a sideswipe at Audi, I don't think, but Carlos Sainz's dad, Carlos Sainz Senior, had apparently really been all in on making him join Audi because he thinks that with the backing that they've got and having had first-hand experience working with them when he won the Dakar Rally with them, he's like, yeah, go here. You know, might not be great straight away, but they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in the future. He basically kind of went, I think Williams are probably going to be more competitive in the short term. I think I'll go and work with them. So it's kind of just interesting because you've mentioned this a number of times. That one little single decision, it felt like the whole sliding doors moment in silly season, right? You know,
Yeah.
there were rumors that maybe Valtteri was going into Williams or other people were going into Williams, and everybody was waiting for everything to happen. Sainz was obviously going to go somewhere else, and then he made that decision, and yeah, silly season took off big style this year. Crazy.
And
Anyway,
whenever we hear about Carlos and his father, it always reminds me of this great clip.
It's my dad. This guy's my dad. I'm my dad. Or he is me. No, I am him. I am.
Anyway, let's hit the video vault, shall we, Rob?
yeah, let's do it.
All right. So this week we have a handful of videos. But Rob stashed one in here. I don't know how he got keys to the vault. I don't understand. Did someone let you in? I don't know. I was
it was
unaware
like
of this.
It was like Ocean's 11, you know. There was a whole bunch of subterfuge
lifted
going
up
on,
the
and
vault
suddenly,
and-
I just appeared inside the vault and dropped a video in there. So I was just browsing. I remember what it was, one of the various social media sites, and saw Williams put this link to a video out there, and it's not fancy. There is no high production in this. There are no graphics. There are no fancy transitions. There's no dramatic music. It's just 9 minutes of watching the team at Williams wait for bits of broken car to turn up from Brazil and then try to salvage all the pieces that they can and then start working out how they're going to stick it all together again to get two cars ready to go to Vegas. Because if you remember last week, there was the whole Williams won't have cars in Vegas. They haven't got enough bits. They don't have enough money. And that was all garbage, but it wasn't untrue that they had a hell of a task. And I just love this behind the scenes. Like they were going through, I don't know if you watched it, but they were like picking out bits that were obviously smashed to pieces and couldn't be reused. They're like, oh yeah, if we get a heat gun, we can probably salvage that nut and we can take that bolt off there. And like, it was proper. Now we'll get to the qualifying later, but all that effort to put Colapinto's car back together again. Oh dear.
I know.
But anyway, we'll get there.
We'll
anyway,
get there.
Back to you for the others.
Well, I went off the deep end on this one. F1 memes number 36, the 2024 season, on the Meshol F1 channel. Meshol F1 channel. I don't know. 10 minutes. I was really plumbing the depths. There was actually a lot of video content this week that I saw fly by, and I didn't get a chance to check because I was, again, on the road. But this one put a smile on my face. It was funny. There were a couple Sky Sports videos. Vegas, baby. Crofty quizzes the F1 fans on the Vegas Strip, 3.5 minutes. It was just meh. But years ago, Matty P1, when he was back at WTF1, when WTF1 was pretty small, was in CODA, and he asked fans some questions, and we, Americans, looked like dum-dums. And so I don't know if he just found people and only took the dumb ones. There was a guy, they showed him a picture of Brendan Hartley. They said, "Who's this?" And he said, "I don't know who she is." Because remember, he had the long blonde hair. Yeah, and I'm like, great job, Americans. We at least showed up better this time, so I'll at least say that. And then the other Sky Sports one is Karun takes on Naomi in the classic Audi time trial, 4 minutes. Okay, I tuned into this. I was excited to see this. It's basically an Audi commercial. Does Audi own a portion of Sky Sports? I was so confused by this.
Did they show a car?
Yes, Audis the whole time, and then at the end they talked about.
At least they did better. At least they did better than the Jaguar rebranding. Then.
Oh, geez. Totally. And the final one is also on the Williams channel, Ice Hockey Challenge. Alex Albon versus Franco Colapinto and the Vegas Golden Knights. Like I said, Williams, 5 minutes. This is the best one of the lot. It's just the two of them shooting hockey pucks at a goal. And again, Colapinto loves to talk. I mean, he just talks. I love this guy. He just never stops talking. And at one point, you can almost see Alex like looking at him like, "Are you going to shut up anytime soon?" Anyway, that was a fun one. But yeah, that's good. Rob enjoyed breaking into the vault this week. We'll see if we allow him to do that next week, or I'm going to close the door and leave him in there.
Right. Okay. Then Vegas rolled around, and I completely forgot what it was like trying to watch this race or parts of it when I looked at my F1 app and was like, 1 a.m. really? Very little of practice was watched live. Let's just put it that way. Thankful for F1 TV, and I was catching it up with my breakfasts in the morning. But FP1 was essentially run in a dust cloud. I've never seen anything like this before. I've never
nuts.
seen. It was. Even at the beginning, when they were on the racing line, it was bad enough. The dust was going everywhere. But then once they cleared that up, as soon as anybody went slightly offline, and they were talking about it on the commentary, they were saying they've even had like road sweepers go over and like suck the dust up off the car off the surface, and had cars drive over it and show that nothing was being thrown up. But they did regular vehicles driving over it, and it's like, yeah. This is like hoovering on a deep shag pile carpet and thinking you've got everything, and then getting a really good hoover out where it goes really deep. Then these F1 cars go over that suction. It was just like it was the Sahara. It was nuts. That was what I really took away from FP1. Really, that it was dusty. That's all I really got.
That's the only practice I saw, and I took about the same thing. It was, yeah. I mean, I gotta complain one more time. If we're going to get a third race in America and they're going to show it at 1 a.m. East Coast time, that's not really a race for Americans. I mean, it's in America, yes. That's it. And that's fine. Again, I have no problem with that, but I don't want to hear people complaining, "Oh, America's got 3 races and they're not really F1 fans." dude, this race is on at midnight for me, Central Time. It's still not great. How many nights in a row do I have to stay up till 2 a.m. to watch F1? And I love F1, but I mean, it is not convenient. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah, yeah. And then the only other thing that really came out of free practice was another one of these things where somebody says something, a bunch of outlets run with it and go in completely the wrong direction. I fell for it, and then I saw Nate Saunders put the right story out, and I felt stupid. And all of this it all came out that Red Bull had bought the wrong wing, the Vegas circuit. It was like, oh my gosh, they brought the wrong wing. They left the proper wing back home, and all these people were piling in on social media going, seriously, how much does it take to overnight ship a wing to Vegas? Surely Red Bull can do that. They got the logistical manpower to do this. And it was gathering momentum. And then when you actually went and looked at Marco's quote, and Nate Saunders did a good job of this, was no, what he actually said was, not that they have brought the wrong wing. They have the wrong wing for Vegas. They don't have track-specific wings. Some teams will do track-specific wings, and a few of them were rolling them out this race. And Red Bull didn't. They brought, I think, the Monza wing. They bought whatever wing they bought, but Red Bull is basically saying it's the wrong wing. Well, I wish we had one of those, but we don't. It just always amuses me how these stories just go off at like a 90-degree angle and gain momentum.
Well, before we got to Qualy, we did talk a lot more about wings. McLaren was saying they didn't have the right wing, or it's not even in their, quiver to have a wing for this type of track. So they said, we're not going to be good this week. Ferrari thought they'd be good this week and not as good in Qatar. So I'm thinking, all right, Ferrari this week, McLaren next week. McLaren even said we plan on being better at Qatar. And then out of nowhere, we keep seeing Lewis Hamilton and the Mercedes doing well in practice. And I'm like, what's going on? Did they turn up the engine? Are we in party mode here for practice? Like, what's actually happening? And the best part is, as we get through practice, both drivers are interviewed at various points, and they both come out and say, we don't know why this car is working right now. Nobody knows in the team why it's working. And I'm like, we're back. This is COTA again, when a gnat farts in the infield and they spin around for an hour. This is this car... While it was great this weekend and Lewis said it was fun to drive and thanked everyone, they have to fix it so they can control it. They don't know when they're going to be good or bad. That's a bad thing.
It's absolutely insane. Like some people were saying, because Mercedes have done this recently as well, where they rock practice and then overnight they turn up and they shake the magic 8 ball and it says, I don't think so. And the car is like a tractor. But I know there was some great social media memes going around this, or like people like putting the two, all the FP leaderboard times with the Mercedes at the top, and then saying, I've seen this movie before. It's like, I know what's going to happen in Qualy. But like you say, it works. So Qualy rocked around, and we lost. Stroll, probably expect to lose Stroll. Bottas, unfortunately, there. Albon, bit of a surprise. I thought, not usually expecting to see him. Alonso, that Aston Martin just isn't working.
It's getting worse.
And then the last person dropped out into the drop zone, one Checo Perez.
I mean,
again,
it's almost like he's egging us on at this point. He's like, just what are you guys going to say this week? I don't understand why he's got a seat for next year. And again, for anybody new, I am a tortured Checo fan, and I have been for a long time. And when he won in Bahrain, his first win, I shed many tears in 2020. And I watched this now, and it's just, I don't understand what they're doing to the guy. It's just not working. And since they've been teammates in 2021, how many times have they started outside the top 10? Max, 6. Checo, 26. 20 more.
He's thrashing him in that stat, isn't he? He's absolutely dominating Max in that stat.
If bigger is better, then Checo's winning. He has as many Q1 eliminations, Checo does, as McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes combined this season. And the Mercedes has been, as we've said, dog poop at various times this year and not made it that far along in Qualy. And there was a rumor, and this is my favorite because this actually resonated with me. I don't know if everyone's kind of like me, where you have these ideas that sit in the back of your head and you don't want to give them credit. You don't give them fuel, air to breathe. And I'm quoting Nixie Ninxie? I don't know. Heard a beautiful rumor at work today that Checo is still there because of the upcoming F1 movie with Brad Pitt. Apparently, Red Bull can't fire Perez because the movie is about Pitt fighting a championship battle with Sergio. So he has to stay on the grid for the movie to happen. I have, for the longest time, been curious because I've seen highlights with Checo in the movie highlights. Is there something that the Red Bull was like, we'll keep him as long as we can for the movie, and now they're just going to bail in 25? I can't imagine he's on the grid. So
Apparently, I mentioned it last week and you dismissed it, but the rumors about him definitely being there with the money that he brings in and the sway is gathering, like people are saying. It's unlikely they're going to drop him.
Well, it was either, I think it was practice where Brundle, maybe it was Qualy, where they said Colapinto, the stories are getting stronger that he'll be on the grid next year in a good car, is the words they used. He's got to be replacing Checo, right?
I just this year has been so ridiculous. I'm not even going to try and predict it. I went back and looked at our silly season predictions that we did as one of our preseason pieces of content, and we didn't get a single one right.
Okay, so let's do this. Before we move on really fast, $5 bet. I bet you that Checo's not on the grid to start 25. And I'd go double or nothing and say it's going to be Colapinto in the Red Bull.
No, I'm not. I lost all my money last night. I went all in and lost. I'm not a good bettor at the moment, so I'm
all right. Moving on.
While the stories are building momentum, not enough for me to put my money where my mouth is. Okay, so Q2, we lost Lawson, Colapinto, Zhou, Magnussen, and Ocon. Again, probably the ones that you kind of expect to drop out of Q2, which kind of meant that we basically, other than Max, we had all the main front runners going through to Q3 with Yuki and the Hulk joining in the fun. That Haas has been so good this year. They've just been. It's not a surprise now when you see a Haas or sometimes even two making it to Q3. We're not now going Haas in Q3. It's like almost a shock if they don't get at least one of the cars in there. So. But we also had we had Colapinto's massive smash. They say 50 Gs?
Yeah,
I think is what it
52.
triggered.
I think I read somewhere. It was
was
greater
it?
than 50. It and you know what? When they showed it at first, it didn't look. I mean, the car looked terrible, but you didn't know the angle. So when he clipped that wall on the left and he clipped it hard,
I was going to say, did a little bit more than clipping.
he ran into
that like
the wall.
sounds like when one of your kids come back. Like, I've kind of clipped the car a bit, Dad.
Yeah, tell me about it. My daughter's real good at just clipping the garbage can, and then I got to replace a whole door. And so anyway, my point is, he really did hit that wall, but it sent him on a terrible angle into the other side as he was coming around. If he had just clipped, I think he would have been. It would have been a lot less impact because he would have had less angle going at the wall. But when they showed it, I'm like, oh, that's bad, and I'm happy he's fine and able to race.
It was only a few hours before the race that the medical center cleared him to take part. It was kind of going up to the wire as if he was going to be allowed to race.
And again, here's Williams having to rebuild the 19th car in like 3 races.
Yeah, exactly. And then Q3 gave us absolutely Mercedes in a nutshell. If you want to know anything about what Brian was just saying about you don't know which way is up with this car, you had at one end of the top 10, Lewis looking like he was nailed on for pole, and then the back end a couple of times. Some people are kind of reading too much into it, saying he's old now, his reactions have slowed down, it was driver error. But it just looked like the back end just kind of went, hey, I fancy having a little bit of a slide here. So that happened to him on both his hot laps, I think. So he's down in 10th with a car that just didn't want to seem to play ball. His teammate in the other one got the lucky roll of the dice with the car wanting to play ball and absolutely nailed it. I could not believe that when he came around that final corner and pipped signs. I was convinced this was a Ferrari front row, and two things happened. One was George, and what was the other thing, Brian?
Well, the gas man. Where did the gas man come from? It was great cheering on Alpine with the double podium, and again, thanks to Sean Kelly for being on in the break between Brazil and now. And we talked a lot about Alpine and what happened with that double podium and what that meant stats-wise. Okay, that's one thing. It was raining sideways. We had red flags and lots of stoppages, and the Alpine could shine because sometimes pigs love slop, and that car has been a pig. However, just because it's cold doesn't make the car that much better. Yes, you can say it changes the way the properties of the tires get fired up, and it's still a bad car. and Pierre dragged that thing to third. That was absolutely insane. You may say, well, maybe the car's better. Ocon was 11th, so there was a pretty big delta to his teammate as well. So I was pleasantly surprised, and I was celebrating Pierre's, I almost said podium, his Q3 appearance and his finishing third in Qualy. I thought that was awesome.
I really did as well. So we had Russell got pole ahead of Sainz. That was our front row. Gasman and Leclerc, Verstappen down in fifth, but crucially ahead of Norris because all he had to do was outscore Norris by 3 points to get his driver's title. Yuki seventh, Piastri eighth, Hulkenberg ninth, and Hamilton in 10th. And that was the way we started. And that was the way that I watched it through maybe slightly blurry eyes, having maybe drank just a little bit too much during the poker game. So I did rewatch extended highlights this morning just so I could make sure that I remembered the race correctly. But lights out on the strip, and Charles engaged rocket ship mode. I was convinced they were going to come together because he just seemed to come down the inside with so much more pace than everybody else. I was like, oh no, Charles is going bowling at turn one. No, beautiful turn from, was it fourth to second, I think?
Amazing, fourth to second. Yeah. And like you say, all of a sudden there are people in front of him moving to the side. Sainz, and who would it have been right next to him? Sainz and Gasly. They go off to the right, and Charles is like, I think I'll take this on the left. And he just motors up there. It was a great move. He's done that a couple times now, either on the first lap or on subsequent restarts. He loves pulling that out. So that was fun. And then I was thrilled with the Lawson-Magnussen battle that was occurring towards the end of lap one. It was unbelievable. And they even joked, and I don't know with the crew you were watching with, I got to rewatch by myself this morning, but Brundle was even joking. You don't often see people take moves like that on Magnussen because you don't think he's going to react well to it. And the two of them were going through corners side by side that you don't think cars can go through. And they do it later in the race with a third participant. Yeah. I loved watching that. Again, maybe we didn't have a lot of battles for the lead. George kind of motored off into witness protection. We'll get into that in a second. But there were so many overtakes and so many good, clean fights for position from, at different times, third and fourth and fifth and sixth on through to 16th, 17th. I loved it. But one of the best in the beginning was Magnussen, as they say in Canada, and Lawson. It was fun.
Yeah, and then I got all super excited because Charles looked like he had the bit between his teeth, and there was some great racing that, like, Charles almost got George like 3 times. They were side by side, and it's like, has he got the corner? Has he got the corner? No, George is just fending him off. And I was like, right, there's no way George can hold Charles off for too much longer. Charles has got this. He's just got to be patient. He's going to take his time. He's going to get him. Meanwhile, Max had charged past the gas man, and Hamilton was charging up through the field. And I'm like, yeah, okay, here we go. Wait a minute, what's happened? And apparently on lap 7, Charles's tyres wrote a little resignation letter and said, yeah, thanks for that, but we're done. And Charles just, all the good work at the start just went backwards. Sainz got him, Max got him.
Well, I was so confused on lap 8, as you say, when they showed this. They show Max taking Charles for third. I go, wait, Charles was in second. Yes. How did he end up in third and then getting taken so easily for fourth? And I wrote my own little notes here. How did Charles end up in third? And then my answer in all caps, tires. His tires packed up and left, like you said. But one thing that I did enjoy very much was Fernando boxing on lap 5 or 6. It was a good move. Yeah, it's a great idea. Let's gain 2 positions in the first 6 laps, but then have to box 47 times, and we'll start on lap 5. Lap 5? 5. It's a 50-lap race. You made it 5. What were you expecting, a safety car in the first 5 laps? I don't understand the strategy whatsoever.
No, I know. So we then had, I think Norris then got the gas man. Hamilton carried on charging through the field. And then we got Max outdragged Sainz. Like, the Red Bull hadn't looked quick. Ferrari had looked amazingly fast, and we just watched. There was a beautiful shot of them, like, side by side, coming all the way down towards the camera. And the track looks ridiculously wide from that point of view. I don't know if it's a trick of the camera lens, but it just looks like they're almost like out. The beginning of Knight Rider when he's going across the wide open desert. It kind of looked like you got these 2 cars, this wide open track. And Max got him. So Sainz, his tyres had given up as well. That Ferrari just did not like that set of tyres at the beginning. The mediums they started on, wasn't it? I think they just chewed or grained straight through them.
The first 14 runners were all on mediums or something like that. didn't agree with them. And as we heard later, it was less about just wear and more about the grains that came through, the graining that everyone got because of the cold temperatures. But we started seeing everybody box by lap 10, 11, 12, Charles, Lando, Max. And I haven't seen this, and I want to go find it. Apparently, Esteban tried to pit and missed his pit box so badly he went back onto the track, did a whole lap, and came back around. I don't know if you caught that.
No.
That's what Crofty was saying. I was able to hear it. They didn't show it. He came into box, missed his box completely, went back out on the track and went one more lap, and then came back in again. So I would love to see if that's accurate, because that is that's just so good. That would tie with this radio message.
You can say to Haas that I'm gonna go for it, so better be ready.
So I just want to now point out that I did a silly little comment on our Threads account. Somebody posted a stat by the name on syllabus on Threads. And it's the stat that you found as well, Brian. And it said, Pierre Gasly is set to become the first full-time driver in F1 history to not cost his team $1 in damage over an entire season. Not a puncture, a cracked chassis, a broken wing, nothing. This insane stat isn't being spoken about. I just commented on there. Well, now you know you've jinxed him, and one of the last three races is not going to work out well.
You said that?
Talking, yeah, and then that got 25,000 views. At my little flippant remark, right? I had to quote tweet it this morning, unfortunately, and say, well, the jinx was strong because it didn't last. You saw it. It came around the corner. We haven't seen this for a long time. You used to see it all the time when engines let go and you kind of see the plume of smoke come out the back, the telltale sign that the gas man's day was over. So the reason that insane stat isn't being talked about is because it didn't happen. He hasn't finished the entire season with no.
Now, again,
no
I don't know how many
issues.
people were watching with you, but the team radio was epic because Pierre says no power, no power, no power, and the team goes, everything looks fine on this end. And then,
That's
like
when the
4
white
seconds
smoke
later,
goes.
massive plume of smoke. No power, no power, no power, and he just comes into box. Everything looks fine on this end. What kind of sensors are they using? I don't understand what Alpine's checking. You could hear it.
Is it the meme with the dog sitting in the bar with everything on fire?
Yeah,
And everything is fine.
Oh, man. By lap 16, then we had Lewis get Lando for 6th, and the idea that the Mercedes were really fast and going really nicely was real. At this point, it was solid.
By this point, we hadn't seen George for about 3 weeks. They'd given up showing him because he was so far up. It was just more interesting to watch Hamilton slice through the field. Like you say, that Merc was back to being good again.
Yeah, it was fun. And at this point, like I'm watching, I'm thinking, all right, Max looks frisky. The Ferraris look okay. And Mercedes looks good. Not so much the McLarens or Checo, like this particular race near the top. And they announced shortly thereafter that Carlos, who kept asking to box, he goes, I'd like to box. He goes, hey, can I come in and get some new tires? And the next lap, he's like, these tires stink. Can I come in for some tires? And they're like, no, stay out. And they go, we're going to go plan E. Ferrari took a lot of pages out of the old Ferrari playbook this week. First of all, they put him on Plan E, which is a horrible idea. They brought back some of these messages.
We'll come back to you.
They brought back this one too.
Copy, we'll check that.
And so we heard all of these old radio messages, and then they eventually bring them in. And
just 1 second, just because. And then they also asked him before he came in to let Charles through, right?
Right.
At a point where Hamilton, who's in a rocket ship, is right up his trumpet. I don't even know how Sainz held position when he let Charles through, because it almost looked like it was a dangerous cutoff where he closed the door on him. But like, give him the message then and say, oh yeah, let Charles through, and not kind of say, and by the way, watch out for that really fast car that's right behind Charles when you do it.
I don't know. I don't know how they were able to not lose both. How he was able to not lose both positions. But then they tell him to box, and they're like box, 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 and then they gave him the stay out, stay out, stay out, which we've heard from many teams at many places over the years. But it was ridiculous. And so I'll let you explain this because I don't know how this wasn't a penalty either.
So he's coming in, and then he bails and he goes across the white line. And everyone was up in arms saying, why is that not a penalty? So I've learnt my lesson over the past few weeks about not taking my news from social media anymore. And I waited for one of the proper news outlets to report it. I can't remember where I found it, but essentially that white line, that divider line, isn't technically part of the pit lane. It's just the divider to show where the pit lane is going to start. And on a race-by-race basis, the race director can designate whether or not you're allowed to straddle that white line. And I think it's done for safety reasons. On some of the tracks where it's deemed unsafe to bail,
Right.
it would be a penalty if you cross that white line. But because it's track specific, the race director has to put it in his pre-race instructions to the drivers to say whether or not that is going to be allowed or not. And there was no mandate in Vegas to say that you weren't allowed to do it. If he'd have gone 50 feet further forward and crossed the line into the pit lane and then bailed,
Right.
then of course, penalty. But he wasn't technically in the pit lane. He was just in the approach to the pit lane. So there you go. There's the nerdy reason as to factually correct with no clickbait attached. Yeah, thanks.
We're getting dangerously close to journalism here, Rob. So you better
I know.
stop
Come on,
doing
let's
it.
back
My
off a little bit.
favorite one of those was when he came back and then said, "Wake up, guys! Come on."
Oh,
My favorite though before this, Lewis had one of these years ago, and this was it.
Keep it saying now. Stay out. In. Hey, man. No, sorry, mate. Hey, just go.
just go.
Everyone has problems like this at some point.
So when he finally comes in, so he'd been asking to pit for about 3 years, and they kind of left him out there. They said, like you say, they bring him in, and then no, they don't. He comes around the next time, and he's like, "What happened?" He went, "We were not ready." And he's like, "Wake up, guys! Come on!" It was great.
That's why I said Ferrari was Ferraring it again.
Oh
it's
my
like
gosh!
when Leclerc got the wrong tires in one of the races.
Do you think it's like some sort of equilibrium in the universe that when Mercedes is good, Ferrari have to go back to clown strategy or something?
Plenty.
It all has to
We are
balance
plenty, which means pit, then don't pit, box, stay out. Oh, man.
Where are we? So they're kind of in the mid-30s now. Hamilton cruised past by Max. You knew that Max doesn't care. Max is not racing Hamilton. He didn't even try to make it difficult because all he needs to do is finish ahead of Lando. So you could see Max had his game face on. It's like, I don't need to get involved in stuff I don't need to get involved in. So Hamilton's way faster. Charles dropped out to pit, which gave us a Merc 1-2. Hamilton had driven from 10th up to 2nd. And then we've got a bit here that is going to come back later, which I don't understand why there's a problem here. But apparently there must have been radio messages to Charles telling him that Carlos wasn't going to try and overtake him. But the way they'd screwed the whole thing up and allowed Sainz to go much longer, like 3-4 laps from when he wanted to pit, they essentially, I guess, gave him a better tyre offset. And Sainz came flying up behind Charles and was like, well, I'm just going to overtake him because I let him through earlier. I let him through when he had Lewis behind him, so he just went past him.
Did you hear Charles's radio at the end of the race?
Yes, I did at the end. And I just think, this is why you're never going to be a world champion, because you're such a crybaby. It's like...
What? No.
Yeah.
What?
Yes.
That's your take
Yes.
from that?
What's he miserable about? He got asked... Sainz was asked to let Charles through, which he did. And then Sainz was faster than him. And I've always said, if you're faster than somebody, just overtake them. Don't do all these little radio messages of tell him to let me through. Sainz was like, no, screw that. I'm past.
What?
I'm faster than you.
This is...
Why would Sainz sit in behind Charles?
This is exactly...
There's no driver title up for either of them. All it matters for Ferrari is that they win the constructors' title. As long as 2 Ferraris come home.
They clearly had discussions about things like this, and Carlos apparently didn't listen during the race. Charles was trying to follow the rules, which maybe he won't from now on. But it did remind me, you say, when McLaren was fighting for it,
Just remember every single Sunday morning meeting we have.
I was waiting for those kind of radio messages.
But what are they going to do?
Charles
Sack
was
Sainz?
pissed. Charles's was more like this the whole time.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think if Charles was better than Sainz today and faster than Sainz today, he would have finished ahead of him. It's simple.
I like Charles too much to take that as an answer.
Well, yeah, okay. But look, I've said this all along. I think Charles is good. I'm just not sure Charles is world title level.
Are you putting him in with Lando then, based on this year? Are you putting him in as like Lando and Charles incredibly talented, never to win the title?
Not yet, because Lando, I think there's some credence to his interview that he did where it almost caught him by surprise that he found himself embroiled in a title fight this year. He wasn't mentally ready to be in a world championship fight because Max just disappeared off into the distance at the beginning. Then all of a sudden, Lando had got a rocket ship and it looked like it might be on the cards. And yeah, okay, maybe he buckled under the pressure a little bit. So next year is the real test for Lando. If Lando has a good car, and does the same kind of thing where he doesn't convert poles and doesn't make the most of a good car when he's got it, then yeah, I think you get this second tier of driver that you really want to be great. But there's only a few of them that ever punch through and get the world title. It's a difficult thing to do, and I just don't see Charles doing it.
Well, that's okay.
I actually see Lewis outperforming Charles next year.
You do?
Yeah.
I don't know what'll happen, but I'm going to keep carrying the
Charles Chuck Leclerc
flag for the American podcast here. So, all right, we get to what I already referenced. Lap 38, one of the highlights. Checo and once again Lawson and K-Mag. So Checo's like, hey, you guys kind of got a little crazy the first couple laps. Can I participate in something too? And it was wild because Lawson decelerates to take the corner, and all of a sudden he has cars on both sides of him. And so he's sitting there looking at it. He's got Checo on the inside. He's got K-Mag on the outside. And Lawson loses to both, I think, at this point. But Checo takes both. Checo he basically was fully pot committed, to use a poker parlance. He was all in, like you waiting to get the race started. Checo's either I'm taking both these guys or I'm out. And he did. And way to go, Checo, because that allowed you to finish 10th in that one juicy point.
So then Sainz did. I think it was a great move. I know Max wasn't as fast, but he outbraked Max into the corner. Great over. I love late braking overtakes. I just do. I don't know why. There's something about them. Hamilton then suddenly went on a charge, and he was 11 seconds behind George, and then he was down to 7, maybe even getting into the 6s. And I thought, ooh, okay, we might have a race developing here. But as soon as it hit that kind of 60, 70 second area, witness protection George woke up and went, yeah, I don't think we'll be having any of that, thanks, and just eased his pace out as if he'd been a tire whisperer all day, I think. He never looked at any problem with his tires. He just drove a beautiful race, put a little bit more pedal to the metal once Lewis was looking feisty, and just took it home. I just think it was we didn't really get to see him on TV. He didn't overtake anybody ever.
Nope.
But just a great drive from George.
Totally agree. And I think that's George's maturation. You remember Singapore last year in 23 when he thought he had a chance. He was in third and his car was getting fast, and he's just pushing it so hard, and he clipped the wall and then just buried it into the barricade.
Yep.
We've seen him do that over and over at different races where it's towards the end, he's getting excited, his eyes are lit up real big, and he's like, I can take a couple more spots, and he does something dumb, and he overcooks it. He hasn't done a lot of that of late. It feels like since maybe Austria, when Max and Lando took each other out and George was in third, and he goes, oh, I'll fancy a win. And he lost, obviously, the win. Was it Spa when he was too light because he went on the extended thing, and so he's disqualified. But that's not really on him. And so to me, I look at it as I think George is maturing, and I'm actually curious to see what Mercedes looks like next year, because now you've got a more confident, more mature George and a kid in Kimi Antonelli.
Yeah.
It'll be fascinating to kind of see what actually happens there. But yeah, that was kind of towards the end of the race here, as you said, and Max finished ahead of Lando, even though Lando got that extra point for fastest lap for McLaren. And Max is our 4-time World Drivers' Champion. 4 times in a row, no less. And if I could find the champagne sound, here it is. Kudos to Max E. Verstappen. That's awesome.
There was a quote that Lando said which really kind of resonated, which was that Max... Oh, before I say this, though, did you see his little chat with Zach Brown? Max?
No.
So Zach Brown was congratulating him, and he went... he said 4 in a row, and he said, and this year's different. He's like, you said I could only win when I had a dominant car. Not so much this year. And it was all said in good jest, but it was like, I think Max probably is enjoying this title more than last year's.
Yeah.
Because last year was a walk in the park. It was just too easy. It was so dominant, that car. It must have been great to drive and win by 20 seconds every single time. But for me, the true mark of a champion, which is what puts Max in that next level up, is some people, when they get a good car, they don't always cash in on it. So they actually don't win when they should. They got the best car, and somehow they go and screw the pooch, and they don't win. He absolutely made the most of a dominant car at the beginning and got all those points in the bag. And then, as the Red Bull started to be caught by everybody else, their upgrades didn't work out. Everyone else's did. We had all that kind of convergence and fantastic racing throughout the season. he dug in. He didn't
Yeah.
let his head drop down
Agreed.
and kind of go, I'm not winning races anymore. I'm going to just go home and play on my sim. He scrapped for every single point. And at races where everyone was predicting, oh, it's going to be difficult for him to finish in the points or blah, 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 he'd always come in with a third or a fifth or a fourth. And he was just there all the time.
Totally agree.
And I think the digging deep when he didn't have the machine is probably what's secured in the title. He's just, that Brazil drive was epic.
Well, the Brazil drive was epic, but I think of things like Silverstone when he finished second or third, and he had no business being up there. Just he let everyone else make mistakes. He made none.
Yeah.
He's just the Terminator. He's literally relentless when he gets behind the wheel, and he will take any opportunity given to him. He doesn't make mistakes, and he just drives the wheels off of whatever they hand him. And when the car is great, he wins by 20, 30 seconds. When the car is crap, he's still battling. Not crap, but you get my point. When it's not the Red Bull, the RB19 of last year, he's still battling. And you're totally right. All right, 21 was 21. Like, it's shrouded in pain for so many fans and people. He won 22, but he won it on the trot, pulling away from Charles and others. 23 wasn't even a battle. He won that after the second race when they realized how good this car was. Like, oh, this is a no-brainer. But 24, they started strong, but as you say, I agree. He never gave up. He said, all right, my car's gotten worse. Their cars have gotten better. I am never going to take a minute off, and I'm going to just make sure we grind this thing out. And that's what he did. And he overperformed that car regularly. So he is a Terminator. He deserves to be a four-time champion.
Yeah, and I would say the only little maybe silver lining for Checo is a few people have said this, not just us, which is that maybe Checo is showing what that Red Bull car is actually supposed to be capable of. That's where that car should be finishing at the moment because it's been caught up by everybody else, and Max is just driving the wheels off it. Truth is probably somewhere in the middle. At the real Red Bull performance is maybe somewhere in the kind of 6th and 7th position. Max is overachieving and Checo's underachieving in it, which is why we get the big delta between the two of them. But yeah, just absolutely nailed it. Just yeah, and do you know what? People don't like him because of his aggressive driving style, and this is where that whole nice guys finish last thing comes in, which is that he, I think, is just very smart. That he knows where the absolute outer limit of the rules are, and he puts his car on the absolute outer limit of those rules every single time. Not just once or twice when he needs to, but every time. He drives to the limit of the rules every time. And a couple of times he's gone past it and he's been penalised for it and he got whatever it was, all those 10-second penalties in that one race. But he's okay with that, I think. He knows that he's dicing with, I'm going to do this, and if I do it well, everyone's going to hate me because they're going to tell I've driven people off the track, but I haven't. I've just played with the rules set. Like, you could have all done the same thing, but you all want to drive by this spirit of the law. He drives to the letter of the law, and that's what I think separates him.
I mean, yeah, regardless of whether you love him or hate him, and he's not my favorite driver. I don't dislike him. I like him enough, but you have to respect the living crap out of his talent because he is unbelievably good. But let's talk about what we thought this weekend alone, the king of the pits. And the pits, we'll start with the king of the pits this weekend. Rob, I'll go first. I'll let you think first. All right, so for me, watching this race, you watch the Ferraris, and they screwed up, a little bit screwed up strategy, and they were complaining and infighting and arguing, and I want a box, and we're not ready. We're having ice cream right now. You can't come in. Charles was sliding a lot. Whenever they showed him in a battle, he would be sliding all over the place. He was getting too aggressive on the throttle on a slippery track. The McLarens were nowhere. Max did a great job. And I would actually argue when the Ferraris passed him, he let them get past smartly. He knew his battle wasn't with them. It's George. George is my king of the pits. George didn't make a mistake. You never saw him sliding around or cutting through corners because he lost control. He drove a clinical race. He converted his pole, and he did a great job staying in front and having no drama, which is a nice thing to have at a racetrack where there's usually second year, but where with it's cold and night and fast and crazy, you could see drama. He had none. So for me, George F. Russell.
Yep, 100%. I think he had a perfect race weekend. Free practice, the practice sessions, he looked quick. Quality, he nailed it. race, like you say, converted pole. It has to be. I was going to say Max, but I think Max gets his own award just for getting the driver's title. So, yeah, George is king of the pits for me.
All right, well, then let's talk about the pits.
You're the pits.
This is easy for me. I've given it to the same guy for 47 races running. It's Checo F. Perez, Sergio Q. Perez III. He is, yes, maybe it's because Max is so much better, but he doesn't even get out of Q1. And the stat we read about the times that the other teams, what was it exactly? It was he's not made it out of Q1 the same amount of times as McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes combined. That's it. That's the answer. It's Checo. We got 1 point. Thanks for all the contributions to the constructors' title.
I'm gonna leave Checo alone this week. I'm gonna give it to the Ferrari team for going back to the clown show of strategy. It was just what was all that about? Everything that kind of happened, any drama that happened, kind of all came about because of them and their poor calls. They've executed a strategy properly. I don't think Carlos would have been close to Charles and wouldn't have had the whole debate about whether should he or shouldn't he have overtaken him. So, and that whole we weren't ready after Carlos was begging to come in for about 3 laps. And they're like, okay, come in. And then he starts coming in and they're like, oh, that will mean we'll need tyres. Oh, yeah, stay out. It's like, come on, guys, you sorted this. You know, I'm a Ferrari fan and they were a laughing stock last year and Fred's come in and kind of steadied the ship and this was just going back to the dark days. So hopefully it's a one-off. But
Hopefully it's a one-off.
But because we're just before we hear from Paul, just we talked about Max winning the drivers. You know, Ferrari, let's not forget here, despite the clown show, beat both the McLarens. McLaren did not work well on this track, which now means we have McLaren sitting on 608 points, Ferrari on 584, and Red Bull on 555. So what are we at now? We're kind of like 30 points, less than 30 points. It's 26 points or something. So that's a big bite that they took by bringing both cars home. So it's all up for grabs now in the last 2 races. It really is. The constructors. So
I would actually argue the best constructors battle, before we get to Paul, is 6th, 7th, and 8th. Because, yes, I agree with you. McLaren's 24 points ahead of Ferrari, that's not a lot. But 24 points, a swing when both cars are in the top 6 or 7 for both teams is hard to make up over 2 races. And if we believe McLaren, they'll be good at Qatar. So it's like, okay, we'll see if they can get a dent. And you're right, Ferrari's 29 ahead of Red Bull or something to that. Yeah, that's right. 29 ahead of Red Bull. And if Checo's going to bring home 1 point every race, well, you're not going to catch him. So that's fine and good. Haas, and I'll get to this in the stats. Haas is 6th. They took Alpine's spot. They have 50 points. Alpine is 7th with 49. That's fantastic. And then RB is 8th with 46. We have 3 constructors 4 points apart in total. That's where the fun is going to be, because 4 points for those guys is a lot. You get one guy into 7th or 8th, all of a sudden it swings by $10 million. I mean, so that's going to be juicy as we look towards the bottom of the points for the next few races. But we want to hear from Paul what he thought of this one. So I haven't heard Paul's review, but apparently we'll be layering some beeps over it as we do. Here is Paul.
Hey now, it's Lizzie. Welcome to the dirty side of the track.
Yeah, see, that's why females shouldn't be allowed on podcasts.
I had my own podcast.
You had a podcast?
Yeah, with the hotel I did my apprenticeship with.
And you had a podcast. What did you talk about?
We had guests who were working in the hotel. It was really nice.
You had guests who were working in a hotel. Sounds like a prison. That's not a hotel.
No, I was working in a hotel and they were guests there.
So
in the podcast.
So you were interviewing guests of a hotel for the podcast?
No. Oh my god. Really? No, it was. I had guests in the podcast that I was doing for the hotel.
What is happening here?
Is that not clear? So it was, for example,
No, it's clear. It's just incredibly boring. Oh, beep, beep. This is a live podcast. Apologies. She's a potty mouth. Okay, hey, no. Well, that is Las Vegas done. Look, this place is horrendous. It's cold. It's gnarly. it's the wrong time of the year. Thursday, Friday night. That's some of the coldest climates I've been in. It might get a little bit loud. I'm just going to walk outside, so we'll have our catering team's loud music playing, so it might get a bit. So what we basically have here is we have a load of, like, let's say Swiss techno. I think it's best to call it that. So anyway, that was Lizzie. She's one of our greatest catering girls. Like, she's fantastic. We have such a laugh. I think I said after Brazil about the way that the team have to work in a way that, you know, they're the hardest working people. You know, first one's in, last one's out. Absolute diamonds. Without catering, none of this works. You know, again, I'm not going to bore you with all this. I've mentioned drivers. It's not drivers. It's people like the catering. So credit. Anyway, yeah, back to it, Vegas. Thursday night, Friday night. Well, where are we? No, because it's weird, isn't it? Because it's all a day before. So Wednesday night, Thursday night. Well, actually, balls to it. Friday night. I say balls to it. I didn't see them. It's so cold. I think this race should almost be like a bit like Abu Dhabi, where we go to soon, where it's like a twilight race, where you get like a bit of daylight, so you get a bit of heat retained. You have the amazing sunset that the Nevada desert gives you, and then obviously you still benefit from the lights on the strip in the evening, and then you get a little bit of heat retained. People can still go and see their shows. I don't know. It's not for me to decide. I'm not paid enough money. And after the last few weeks, I'm not paid at all. So any royalties I could take from the dirty side of the track would be appreciated. In terms of the race, let's keep discussing that, because it's the reason I'm here. And again, you're all probably looking at each other thinking he's jabbering again. And that's fair. I don't know if the race was good or not. I think it was good. It was brilliant to see Lewis. Lewis really sucked in qualifying because he was nailed on the pole. And the way he hunted Georgetown was incredible. I'm really sad he didn't make it, because he was actually a deserved winner. And George was a deserved winner, by the way. No issue. And then onwards from there, oh, yeah, Max is world champion. Of course, I saw the big news. I think after Brazil, it was sort of, I think we said last time, it was sort of won anyway.
Yep.
So that was that. And then, yeah, it was just sort of like, you know, I think I think I said I'm amazed Ferrari getting anywhere near the constructors. I think they're going to win it, and I think after this weekend, I haven't actually seen the constructors championship, but that's going to be a big old hit, especially over McLaren as well. So I guess that's really exciting. Now the drivers is done. I think we always want a championship to go further down. A lot of people don't care about the constructors, but as I think I've mentioned many times before, for us guys, it is quite important, and it is good. And let's be fair, for Ferrari to win that, I think is a massive achievement. So that's going to be really exciting going into a triple header. So I've got to get my thinking cap on to think of a way I can properly introduce the triple header for next week. Look, truth be told, I'm going to level with you guys. I'm not a huge fan of this place. Anyway, it's too cold. It's way too cold. It's way too windy today. It's way too late. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come on maybe in December, and we're going to have a bit of a review, and I can give you a bit more of an insight into these last three races and how mentally and physically tiring it all is. Just to, you know, again, I know I do these podcasts sometimes and I harp on about how things are sometimes a little bit average, and I think it's these sort of times when it's stuff you probably don't even think about, and you shouldn't be thinking about either, and that's not discredit to you guys. It's stuff you should not be thinking about, so I'm happy to do that. On the whole, trust me, I am buzzing to get out of Las Vegas. And then, yeah, over to Qatar. I've got a night back in England first, which I'm looking forward to. But for now, let's just say, look, you know, yeah, Las Vegas. Yeah, it was a good race, I guess. It was good just to see Lewis coming through the field. I think it was okay. And then I will speak to you all next week, and only a matter of days. Catch you soon.
Thanks, Paul. That was awesome.
How windy.
How windy was it?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was great. That was a good recap. And Lizzie, thank you for making a cameo on the dirty side. Shall we do some stats to wrap up the week?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's put Vegas to bed before we do the Qatar preview.
SAP Stats Vegas edition. The first few of these we heard on TV. The 2024 season is the first in F1 history in which we have 4 different constructors have finished 1-2 in a Grand Prix: Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, and Mercedes. It's the first season in history in which 4 constructors have won at least 4 Grand Prix each. And this is the one that Crofty was trying to get out and got it out wrong 3 times. It's the first season in history in which 7 drivers have won multiple Grand Prix. He had forgotten George had won in Austria, and he was basically saying George was his first win at first. And I could hear Sean Kelly frantically yelling in the background, "No, it's a second!" So Hamilton remains 7th in the Drivers' Championship. Again, this was a stat from the TV. He's never finished an F1 season outside the top 6. Now, if Mercedes can be decent in Qatar, Lewis is currently, as I said, 7th. He's 9 points behind George. Is his chance to get into the top 6? He's 9 points behind George. So we'll have to watch what happens there. So Hamilton is now finished on the podium at 36 different circuits, extending the record he already held when he had 35. The race was Mercedes' 60th 1-2 in their constructor history, but interestingly, their first since Brazil in 22, which is quite some time. Obviously, as we've already referenced, George got DQ'd at Spa, so it would have been there, but he didn't have enough weight in his car. Sainz finished P3 for Ferrari, his 3rd top 2 finish in the last 4 Grand Prix. And then, interestingly, teammate Charles Leclerc took P4. He is the top scorer in the U.S. races this season with 64 points and was very, 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 very unhappy at the end of the race. I thought about trying to find the audio for that, but it would just be all beeps. So
Yeah.
we'll never see that. After crossing the line to P5, Max became the 6th driver in F1 history to win 4 or more world championships. Fangio, Prost, Schumacher, Vettel, and Hamilton. And they had an interesting stat on TV. I think they said he was the 2nd to ever win his first 4 in a row, and the other was Vettel, also at Red Bull. It was 2010 to 2013, right, for Seb? So
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
that was pretty fascinating. And then this is a Sean Kelly. He joins Nelson Piquet and KK Rosberg in 81 and 82 and winning their championships in Vegas. However, here's the one that's the most fascinating. Verstappen won the title in Vegas by finishing P5, exactly as did Piquet in 81, who is the father of his girlfriend. That's a rando stat. Anyway, Lando did take the fastest lap of the race. McLaren's lead in the constructors is only 24 over Ferrari. Paul thinks they'll make that up. I don't know if they will. Nico finished P8, and we already talked about this. So Haas moved back up to 6th, 1 point over Alpine. And finally, there were no yellow flags in the whole race.
Yeah, I know. I'm surprised. I thought somebody would hit a wall somewhere, but yeah, nothing at all. Right, well, that was Vegas then. That was Vegas, and like Paul says, we turn our attention to Qatar. Oh, yes.
Should we talk fantasy? Because this is the one time
is
it's
it?
actually calculated.
Oh, has it? Is it updated, has it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, go for it.
So, I first of all, I had an abysmal week. I finished 21st, tied with Andy Tails, 226. Rob, you were right in front of me with 234.
Oh, wow, okay.
Tied with Paul. What do you know?
I fell asleep after FP3. I tried to power through and watch it. I'm going to watch FP3, then I'm going to set my fantasy team. And then I fell asleep, missed Qualy, watched it in the morning, and then thought, didn't change my team at all.
Well, we had a massive 283 points from Phoenix AMG Osama. 283, that's a lot of points. He had doubled Lewis, so he got a lot of juicy overtake points. Nice job there. Max Verstappen Shafts 24 with Matthew 280, Verstappen Factory 271, Waystar Royko Busan 258, Kimi Hakkinen Niku 252 points, Shui Transmitted Disease Matt 252 as well, and then Professor's B Team Rakesh 250, Team Meli Mohammed 249, Petronas RT Fariz 247, and then rounding out the top 10 is Yank the Mike with 245. So I'll just say at this point, without going through the whole list, when we look at the full season, Busan and Waystar Royko, 5,005, has about a 50-point lead over Yank the Mike. So we've got only 2 races left, and we've got a battle down to the end.
Whew. Nice. Right. Qatar then. I forgot that this, for some bizarre reason, I thought this had been around much longer than it actually has. We've only actually raced here twice. And I was looking at the preview that we did before, and I still can't see the difference on the two track maps on Wikipedia. So, 57 laps of the track and a sprint race. It is apparently a 3.367 mile circuit. In 2021, it was a 3.343. Now, the two layout map on Wikipedia, I pasted them over the top of each other. There seems to be zero difference. And when they announced they were making all these major upgrades to the circuit, none of them were to do with layout. So the grandstands were bigger, new VIP areas, viewing screens. They did a boatload of renovations, but it doesn't look like the track changed, but somehow it's now very little bit longer. So anyway, if anyone knows the reason behind that and can find and point to the area that's changed, I think they changed where the start line was, but that's just moving.
It's the
a
same
line.
amount of tracks.
It's just bizarre. So we had the first one in 2021. We skipped 2022 due to the FIFA World Cup. It's football, Brian, the round ball, and
you use your foot with that.
Yeah, you use
That's
your
too
foot
obviously
to kick a
named.
ball. It's
Too obviously
bizarre,
named.
isn't it? Yeah. I'd forgotten about last year completely until I sat down this morning to start doing the preview. So, if you remember, and it did, the old, the fog of last night's poker game started to lift, and I was reading this through, and I was like, oh yeah, I vaguely remember this. After practice, Pirelli were getting worried that there seemed to be tyre issues with the curbs, and they were seeing tyre failures. So they did some kind of change where they did some work to the curbs, and they extended one of the practice sessions to, what do they call it, an acclimatization period to get used to, they could get some tyre data. And they were thinking they were going to have to limit the tyre runs to 20 laps, and then you would be mandated to pit. So, but then they didn't get enough running in to be able to really validate this. So the FIA and Pirelli got together and went, yeah, let's call it 18. And it was the first time ever in Formula One history that pit stops became basically mandated because you ain't running any more than 18 laps on these tires. So I completely forgot about that.
I forgot about that too. I remember it being hot. We'll talk about that in a minute, where people had to retire. And if you remember, Logan Sargent was actually getting sick in the car, as were a few others. I think Esteban was as well. And if you go back, Fernando needed to be helped out of his car. Again, Lance was helped out of his car and then brought to an ambulance. So it was quite hot last year. One other note, I forgot about the tire stint limit and the first time that had ever happened. Max won. So Oscar won the sprint. Max was second. Checo crashed out. Max won his World Drivers' Championship on a Saturday. It was not the first time someone had won their Drivers' Championship on a Saturday. However, Max again won his Drivers' Championship on a Saturday. First time anyone has ever won two of them in a row on Saturdays. So there you go. There's a stat that doesn't matter.
And isn't interesting. So we, like you say, Max had got pole position from the quality. Oscar was on sprint shootout pole. He converted it to a win in the sprint. We had Oscar, Max, and Lando. The sprint had 3 safety cars and 5 retirements. I mean, it's a sprint. It's about like 3 laps long, and they managed to get 3 safety cars and 5 retirements. We had Lawson, Logan, Ocon, Perez, and Hulk all crashed out. Then we got to the race. Sainz didn't even start because he had a fuel leak detected in the car, so he didn't even get to play along, which he was probably happy about when we, like you say, when we get to some of the things that happened in the race. Lewis also decided it was too hot and didn't want to be part of it, so just ran into George on the first corner.
And then he gets out and walks across the track back to the pits.
That was the one, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was.
So we had a safety car after about 8 seconds of the race. But, like you said, it was the heat that caught all the news. We had Ocon said that he threw up in his helmet twice.
Oh.
Yeah, can you imagine?
No.
No, I don't even want to imagine, actually. I'm going to not try to put that in my head. Logan retired due to heat exhaustion. Albon went to the medical center after for heat exhaustion. Stroll was as well, and he said he was actually losing consciousness in the car every now and again. Maybe he would have driven over gravel by mistake. I don't know.
Man. So the podium was Max, Oscar, and Lando. It was wild. I mean, I am excited to see this race, and it is a sprint. I will be using my 3X. No, sorry, I'll be using my Unlimited. I'll be using.
I have to use my 3X.
Yeah, so it's my chance to get out of get into the top 20.
Yeah, you
for the
fell out
season.
this week, didn't you? You fell down to 21st this week.
See, you did look at the fantasy stats.
Well, just then, when you told me it was updated, I brought it up on my phone while you were reading it out.
Yeah, bad week. Bad week.
So, yeah, repeat winners is not really a big interesting one. It was like when we did the Vegas preview, really. Drivers, Lewis and Max won each, which therefore turns into Mercedes and Red Bull won each. We'll do our predictions midweek, as is our way. Yeah, I'm going to allude to where I'm going with my midweek predictions, and I think we're going to see a new constructor get added to that list.
You think we're going to see a new constructor added to the list? Yeah, me too.
To the list of the
McLaren.
winners. Oh, okay, so you're all in on McLaren, are you?
I am. When teams are so bullish to say we're going to stink this week, but we know we'll be good next week, and when other teams go, we know they're bad this week, but they'll be better next week, I actually listen. And so, yeah, I think McLaren's going to. I think Lando's going to win next week. It'll be in my predictions. I'm not going to give any more away. You'll have to tune in midweek.
We should do this because we always forget to do this. But looking back, my midweek predictions were a Ferrari 1-2 with Max making up third. So all I got was Sainz, as in on the podium. That's all I got. You, my friend, you said Max was going to win, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you remember who your other two were?
Lando and Charles?
Yeah, so you didn't get anybody correct on the podium. We should start tracking this next season. We'll turn our midweek predictions into a leaderboard. And
Can I just say what I did? I was driving home from a trip, and I had to record this when I got home. And so I looked on ESPN Bet, and I took their top 3 odds because it's Vegas. So I'm like, well, maybe the bookmakers are actually paying attention because it's in their backyard. Literally, it's in their front yard, actually. And I'm like, oh, they must get this one right. And they hosed me up. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Vegas. Vegas, baby, Vegas.
So, yeah, we'll do our midweek predictions. As always, I'm going to have to try to find some music which is Qatar themed. It was quite easy doing a Vegas one, but I'll be challenged this week. And
you could just turn that Q into a G and call it a guitar.
On that note, I think you need to wrap up and sign us off, Brian.
Can't wait to speak to everybody in 1 week's time after the Qatar GP. Thanks, everyone. Be well, be safe.